So as they pick stuff, you'll see these update in real time with what's going on with these employees. And we've got different sort of notifications that can happen. Like, for example, he short picked these couple products. Well, now if we go and look over at this screen, this is the center for looking at stuff that went wrong, short picks, bad scans, maybe other stuff in the future. Oh, something new just came in. This other employee tried to scan something and she scanned something wrong, so it popped up down here, right? So all this stuff is totally real time, and that's the really cool part of having all this integrated with our handheld, which is you can pretty much see up to about 5 seconds in the past exactly what's going on in your warehouse, who's doing what, whether stuff is out of stock, stuff like that. We'll probably also in the future be integrating things like maybe making cuts to orders based on short picks that happened here, and you can imagine a lot of stuff, changing truck transfers maybe, depending on the availability of items. Maybe you replenished some product into a different stock location and now you want the employees picking it to be pointed to that stock location instead. That would all be handled in this area. As these notifications come in, the person with EOStar will be able to handle that sort of problem. So anyway, as this happens, this will all get updated. And if these guys finish their pallets, and actually let me speed up the testing a little bit so that they'll finish them a little quicker, just for a better demonstration.
Does this work in the real world?
Yeah, we'll try to leave that slider in to speed up your employees too. But as this comes in, this kind of goes to the third part of what I was describing, a way to look at all this stuff at once, and that's this overview screen we've got over here. Oh wow, this guy, he's done something wrong. Well, I'm not sure. Oh, okay, it fixed itself. Anyway, so this is a big screen describing all the picking that's happened all night, more or less. And as you can see, we've got a whole bunch of different ways of measuring what's going on. We've got the trucks that are being picked, and here you can see, oh, here's how many cases have been picked on this truck. Here's how many are remaining. So here's how far it is to being totally finished. We've got all the orders that are being picked, along with sort of information about how far those are along. We've got all the pallets that are being picked, what's on them, how much they weigh, all this sort of information. Then we've got these line-by-line details of this employee picked this much at this time, and here's how much time he spent. Here, if it was a short pick, you can see it, that sort of thing. So all this information. And by the way, we're really looking for feedback on what we can put here that would be really useful to you that we just haven't thought of. Because there's certainly an almost endless amount of sort of stuff we could display, and graphs we could make, and charts we could make, and places we could export it to, right? So if you can imagine any kind of information that would be really useful to you that isn't obvious, then please drop us a line and we'll probably put it in. And then up here, you've got a different kind of metrics that you can measure, metrics for each employee about sort of that employee's progress and how productive he's being. And here you can see some real simple metrics, like how many cases has this guy picked every hour? These guys are very fast. And how many picks has this guy made every hour? And you can also click here and get a little graph of the same thing if you like. So, let's see, what have I covered? Well, that was actually a whole lot of stuff really fast. So, do you guys have any questions about any of this? Sorry?
No, I don't believe we did.
What about you guys?
Okay.
How do you control the pick sequence of a zone?
Well, right now, the pick sequence of a zone is sort of just inherited from the pick sequence of the item in the warehouse, like the same one that's been there forever. We definitely want more granular information about sort of where stuff is in the warehouse maybe, but we're not totally sure about how to represent that in the EOStar database in a way that is going to work for all these distributors that are laying out their warehouses differently yet. So, how would you like to express the pick sequence on your items? I mean, how do you organize this stuff?
Well, as a ternary judgment here, I think your pick sequence has to be an order of travel within your pick zone for most efficiency. I think carrying quantities in your pick areas is important in the grand scheme of things.
Gotcha, so you think that we definitely need something where we can say, 5 of this Beta keg are in this stock location with pick sequence so-and-so, and 10 of it are in this other stock location with pick sequence so-and-so.
I think long-term, that's where you wanna go. I don't know if you need to come there right out of the chute, but I really think long-term, you need to carry inventory in your pick zones.
This is Kent. I would mention one other thing, just an extension on what Marshall was talking about. As far as his dispatcher, can you go back to the dispatch pallets there, Marshall? What is of interest here that we will be supporting, there are lots of situations where more than one employee is involved with picking a pallet. And this is particularly becoming the case where you have layer pick devices or claw pickers. They're loading part of a pallet from a high priority fast pick area of the warehouse, then handing those pallets off to somebody to finish up from the regular stock locations that you'd be picking from. Another potential where more than one employee might work with a pallet is if you got a guy that he works in zone 2, that's the beer zone, go put the beer on the pallet. And this other guy works in the soda zone, go put the soda on the pallet. So what would happen in that case, it's very easy from our design's perspective to handle this. We simply are going to be assigning employees to work in particular zones of the warehouse that you'll specify. And then we'll assign products essentially to particular zones in the warehouse. So if I have a high velocity item coming from zone 1 where my claw pick machine's at, then when we go to actually dispatch through our automated dispatcher, we'll say, oh, this has some zone 1 stuff on it. It's going to go to an employee that handles zone 1. He would pick that portion of it, and then instead of the pallet being completed, it's just going to live back there waiting to be dispatched out to the next employee that could finish it up. And we'd be gathering metrics for both of those employees that were involved with the pallet. And so you're still getting perfectly good real-time information about who's done what and how many cases per hour so you can pay them appropriately. So that the notion of zones and the notion of more than one person picking a pallet is definitely kind of built in from the design to start with here.
Another thing that is probably going to be important to a lot of folks, I don't know if it's going to be important to you, is a QA process after maybe all pallets or maybe some small subset of pallets. We've also definitely built into the design the idea that, well, after you've picked a pallet, you want to check it out somehow. You know, maybe some of the pallets go to a staging area. At Andrews, all the pallets go through a scale to check that the weight is within some small boundary of what they expect it to be. So we're certainly going to have some area where you can add a process like that. It's not in there yet, though.
Yeah, I would expect, I mean, from the competing systems, they have all kinds of QA. You might, for a new employee, want to QA all the pallets that he picks. For a particular chain of accounts, where you're required to have your ASNs match up very well, you might want to QA all those pallets. Otherwise, you might just want to take a random sampling. 10% of the pallets are going to run through QA. You can imagine if we just had another tab on this form, this the QA area, the pallets that are appropriate and need QA, and they just drop into that list. And we would probably provide a little handheld application or tablet application where a person can sign off on the QA. Stamp it with the seal of approval on that pallet and say that's good to go. Or actually fix it. So that'll be certainly integrated in. That's an easy thing to do. Are there any special considerations you might have at your warehouse that you think would not be addressed by what we've discussed so far?
Too, that we do here. One of the things that we do in our locations, 2 of our 4 facilities, we actually price, put price tags on the cases of beer ourselves in the warehouse for the customer. Well, not all customers, just a handful of our convenience store customers, we do some pricing for, which adds a little bit of a different twist than I think a lot of you may be dealing with or know about.
So how do you do that now? They just have a price sticker gun there that they essentially, just like they do in a supermarket?
They keep price guns on themselves, and the pig tickets that print out through EOStar already have the prices listed on there.
Well, it's certainly easy for us to print out the prices, and since we know when the fellow's picking it, exactly, what order it's on, what customer it's for, so how much they're going to get charged. Because we need all that information to be able to print nice ASNs and pallet labels and things like that. So it'd be a pretty easy thing. We could actually incorporate it into the application, almost, to be able to say, okay, print this thing out, but I think they must use a special gun to do that. But we can at least give them the number to put on the gun to be able to print the thing.
Mm-hmm. So that would be just one consideration for us.
Well, that's good. I've never heard that one before.